Welcome, everyone. This is Jamie Flinchbaugh, host of People Solve Problems, and today we have as a guest Heidi Wachs. Heidi, how you doing?
I'm great. Great to be with you.
Great to have you here. So a little introduction. We're kind of talk about cybersecurity here. So Heidi's the managing director, engagement management, and head of the Washington D.C. office of Stroz Friedberg, an Aon company, where she helps clients prepare for and respond to data breach and cybersecurity incidents, and develop and implement data privacy and information security programs. And that's a mouthful. That's a whole lot. And I had a chance to sit in a session at the National Association of Corporate Directors, a workshop. So 3.5, 4 hours of nothing but this topic. And Heidi was a big part of that. I learned a lot from her. And so here we are. So glad to have a chance to talk to you.
Yeah, really glad to be here. You got like 4 hours of me talking nonstop, and now you're going to get 20 more minutes of it. So,
well, we won't be able to recap all of that, but I had lots and lots of notes from the program you did. So I enjoyed both the format and the content of what you did there. So a lot of times you spend either preparing for or, of course, managing through an incident in cybersecurity. It's on lots of people's minds, as it should be. And many companies, suffer their way through an attack or just looking over their shoulders for one. So as you get into, a moment, again, either in preparedness or in the incident itself, is more than one problem to solve. There's lots and lots of problems that are all intersecting. So I like to talk about the problem landscape, but how do you manage and prioritize this giant slew of problems all around you?
yeah, it's a great question, and that's exactly what it is. It's like layer upon layer of problems that you have to solve for all at the same time and all in very quickly, because tensions are running high, emotions are running very high. I wish more people were, as you said, looking over their shoulder and waiting for it, but unfortunately, that's not really the case. Still, it's kind of crazy in 2024. Despite people having incident response plans and getting more prepared and it being in the headlines every day, many of the clients who contact us in that moment of crisis are somewhat caught off guard. So, I think the first piece of the puzzle is like, what is going on and what do we need to do to stop the bleeding if it's an active incident? Is there a foreign nation state in your network? Is there a ransomware situation where your files have been encrypted or your systems are down and you can no longer produce things, whatever the things are, the widgets? But also a big part of the problem solving is communicating and getting everybody on the same page. So who's in charge? Who's going to drive this ship? Most of our incident response engagements are done at the direction of outside counsel. So there are inherently a minimum of 3 parties. You have the company or the client that's experiencing the incident or undergoing the investigation. You have us as the outside investigator, forensic investigator. And you also have outside lawyers who are kind of putting an umbrella over the whole thing and directing the investigation to preserve as much as possible attorney-client privilege. Mm-hmm. So in addition to solving for the technical situation that's going on, there's also a translation issue, right? So part of my job and my skill set is being able to broker the conversation between the legal team, the technical team, and the business stakeholders who are usually the most caught off guard, to be honest.
Yeah, that's great, especially coming down to your role. So I want to tie your role kind of back with some of that tensions and emotions. So in problem solving, we often like to say that the clear roles help minimize some of the emotions, triggers, et cetera, in problem solving, but also good process helps us, kind of tamp down some of the drama. So how much do you depend upon your role clarity and or frameworks or tools or process to help navigate the emotions, the different agendas and ambiguity that everyone's dealing with?
Yeah. So from my perspective and my role, like, we have a process established for our company. How do we get these investigations up and running? What is the process that we go through? I actually literally just got off of a call right before you and I started where we have a new incoming investigation to deal with. So from our side on our company, we have a very established process. Somebody contacts me and says something is going on. We pull in the right people based on what's happening, and we get the paperwork up and running. We put together an estimate. But part of my role from having done this so many times, and our company from having done this so many times, is to also manage the lack of a process, sometimes, not always, but sometimes with the clients. So having a conversation, and I say this a lot, but a lot of this is, sometimes we'll get on the call and I will say, listen, great that we have all these people on the call. What I'm really, really going to need is you to find the person in your organization who is the one that gets stuff done. And that's like a edited version of what I actually usually say, censored version. But I say, you know who the person is. Who is the person in your company that always has the to-do list, that is always tracking everything that needs to be done, that has, 10 different spreadsheets with all of the tasks and who's in charge of them? I say, give me that person. I don't care if they're legal or not. I don't actually care what part of the company they're in. Give me that person, because in an investigation, in an incident, in a cyber attack, you need the person who is going to point the finger at the responsible party and say, hey, this is on your plate. Did you get this done? This had to be done by the next update call.
Yep. No, I love that. In fact, that was one of the notes I made from the talk in DC was that advice, which I think is fantastic, because most of the other people have other roles to fill at the same time, which makes that role very, very useful. So maybe walk me through just a high level your overall process itself. So you're coming into an incident situation. What is your sort of core problem solving process to go through this type of issue?
Yeah, so I think the first thing that's super interesting for me that I learned about myself in doing, I've been doing incident response for 15 plus years now. So, and there definitely was a time where I too would get very worked up and very amped up. There was also a time where, like in the early days of ransomware, it's devastating to companies. They are shut down. They are offline. If you are a small company and you don't have the resources and don't understand how you're dealing with this, and I would get, not to them, I would be holding their hand through it, but as soon as the call would end, I would have my own sort of freak out, and I would need to sort of like get that adrenaline out and get that emotion out on my side as well. Over time, what I've learned is that from the problem-solving perspective, this is pattern recognition. If I get on the phone and somebody says to me in the first 30 seconds, I'm seeing this, or I'm seeing this weird thing, or we got a ransom note that has this language in it. I've now done this enough times over and over again that I can say, this looks like this pattern. So for me, part of the problem solving is, what bucket can I kind of fit what I'm hearing in? And that helps me bring the right skill sets and the right expertise to the investigation to help solve the problem. It also helps me manage and direct what's going on better on the client side, to say, in tandem with the lawyer, listen, we're in the early stages of this investigation, but it sounds like it might have impacted your payroll data. It sounds like it might have impacted your HR data. It sounds like it might have impacted your intellectual property. This is a foreign nation state behavior, what we're seeing. We think they're probably after your trade secrets. So get me those stakeholders to be part of the conversation, and lawyers bring the right legal expertise to have that conversation as well. So for me, the problem solving is, number one, pattern recognition, and number two, bringing the right people to the party to have those conversations and really solve the problem collaboratively.
Yeah. So I love that. And, there's a lot of problems you can solve just by, investigating your way through it. But when speed is of the essence, pattern recognition is a tremendous multiplier effect on that speed. And as you said, almost everybody in the company could be affected. So, but you want to be talking to the right people. So that pattern recognition helps with that tremendously. So as you mentioned earlier, there's layers upon layers of some of these problems. So how do you approach breaking it down into smaller bits, which I assume either have different solutions or perhaps different time frames where we have to solve the first bit now, the next bit later. But how do you break those down in a meaningful way that allows you to process through the complex problems?
Yeah. So sometimes that also depends on sort of the scope and the scale of a cyber attack or the incident or the investigation or what's going on. But this also applies, I think, to our proactive work. So not only to the reactive work, but also to the proactive work, which is, again, for us, it's very technical. So understanding what pieces of technical expertise need to come together to solve the problem. So that's one way to break it down into pieces. So let's say, for example, we're doing a project where we want to make sure and see whether the client's environment is secure from the outside in. So that could involve a web application pen test. It could involve an external network penetration test. So basically, and it could also, if they have like a mobile app or they have a product, it could involve source code review. So now we're talking multiple work streams together, but the findings all have to speak to each other. The findings all have to be collaborative and presented together. So you're looking at all these pieces to help a company understand, hey, where's your exposure? Like, have you locked all your doors and windows, or are some of them gaping wide open for somebody with the right amount of sophistication or not a lot of sophistication to come in? And so that's an example of a place where we would bring the right subject matter expertise, but we would break it apart while the work is actually being done. And part of my role would be at the end to synthesize all of those findings and put them together at a level up. So at an executive level, at a board level, and say, listen, we did all this work on the ground. It was all these different pieces. And now we're putting them together to paint you a picture of where your real risk is and what you need to be concerned about.
I love that. And I like to say that all frameworks are wrong and some are useful. So you have to pick a framework that's going to be most useful, and having a subject matter expertise framework to say what are the skill sets kind of gets you to the work that has to be done, I think, very quickly. So that seems to be a really nice fit for the situation that you're at hand. Just sort of building on that as a follow-up question, are there ways your client companies are sort of already organizing the work that you have to undo in order to get it organized the way it needs to be done?
Not necessarily undo it or unorganize it. What I would say is a couple of things that I've seen is that there has to be a degree of fluidity and flexibility into everything security and cybersecurity related, right? Because sometimes my pattern recognition spidey sense is off and I'm seeing one thing and it turns out it's something else. Or sometimes it's presenting as one thing and I'm like, this just doesn't feel right. I think there's something else going on here. But some, clients, some companies are very beholden to the plans that they have made or the playbooks that they have made for these types of scenarios. And what happens in real time causes you to need to diverge from those plans. So I wouldn't say that I say like they're wrong, but I think sometimes there's an element of rigidity that you have to have like a real conversation and say, I know that you rehearsed this. You did exactly what you were supposed to do. You did a tabletop exercise every quarter. You did technical exercises. You did executive level exercises. You thought that you were so prepared for this, and you're trying so hard to follow this playbook, but the playbook is not a one-to-one mapping with what's actually happening in real life in real time. So let's have out again, who should really be steering this on your side? Who are the right stakeholders? And that we have the right people as part of the conversation. So it's not usually like breaking it all down and rebuilding it. It's more about tweaking it a lot of the time, but it does take some effort.
Yeah. No, I could imagine that. I used to be a soccer coach, and you'd run drills and then everybody assumes that's how it's going to play out when you blow the whistle and the match starts, but it doesn't, right? It's too dynamic
Yeah, it's a lot more like a kid's soccer game where like all the 5-year-olds are just running towards the ball at the same time.
right.
Rather than everyone playing their position.
And that one kid who plays his position actually could be really useful and just things go. So I love that. So to that point around a playbook then, right, you have, two factors. One is you're doing it with a lot of ambiguity, that you don't have all the information you need. Two, you're dynamically, you have an opposing party, the bad actor, that changes that context. So it's kind of like doing surgery on someone while they're still in the car accident, and the damage is still occurring. So navigating that environment, there's process, there's framework, there's all of that. Then there's intuition and creativity. How do you integrate and weave between the objective and the intuitive and the procedural and the creative as you're navigating these incidents?
Well, I have to give a lot of credit to the team that I work with that actually, is on the ground doing the investigation for that. So we'll have the initial intake call. We'll talk about what's going on. We'll talk about what we're seeing. But as the investigation develops and evolves, I'm in constant contact, quite honestly, with the technical team that's actually conducting the investigation. And I'm very, very lucky that I work with amazingly brilliant people who are very articulate and clear. And they know that I am not as technical as they are. And I'm very lucky also that they are patient enough to explain it to me. But I always tell them, if you can explain it to me, then you can explain it to the client, then you can explain it to the lawyer. So consider me your dress rehearsal. So we spend a lot of time talking about what they're seeing and what they're finding as the investigation is unraveling. Now, sometimes that can happen very quickly, right? So take, for example, a case where it's an email compromise. So sometimes it's very obvious which user clicked on the phishing link. The phishing email is still in their inbox. We're able to find all of the pieces of the puzzle and connect it very easily. Sometimes it's not that straightforward. Sometimes it's the threat actor, who we don't know who they are, got into the environment and we don't know where they went within the environment. We don't know what they did within the network. We don't know whether they stole data or not. And that is where it's much more collaborative and an ongoing discussion. So day 1, the conversation is very different than day 3, then day 5, then week 3. So it's a constant communication and discussion about, have we checked here? What about this? Do we feel comfortable and confident that we've answered all the right questions? What are you seeing? And also, what's available to feed the investigation? What evidence is even there for us to have a conversation and look at?
Mm-hmm. Yep. No, I like that a lot. And again, knowing the players, it's not just your intuition, it's the collaborative intuition that comes together there. And how to trust somebody and what they're telling you, and that team dynamic helps a lot. One last quick question, just specific to the realm of cybersecurity, but it happens in a lot of fields where we spend a lot of time on preparedness or prevention and forget response, right? So my daughter lives in Wisconsin. You can avoid getting stuck in the snow, but you should also have a blanket and a flare in case you do. So just in cybersecurity, are people putting almost too much effort into prevention and forgetting how to be prepared when it happens? Or how do you find the balance between those two solutions?
Yeah, there's a piece in between those, a connector piece in between the preparedness and the response that I see a lot that I wish I didn't see so often, which is what's the smoke signal? What's the canary in the coal mine? Pick your, euphemism. What is the thing that tells you something has either already gone wrong or is starting to go wrong? And now we see a lot of clients that have a lot of tools in place that can give them that information or tell them, like in your example with your daughter, like the weather forecast, like, hey, something's coming, something's about to go wrong, or some alert is going off and saying, we see this bad activity, but there's so much noise, there's so much going on, or there's nobody actually watching the alerts 24/7 that it's missed. And so you skip right to response because you had the opportunity to maybe block it, measure it, see it early on, and nobody was paying attention. So now we're all the way to response, and it's gone from what could have been manageable to hair on fire.
That's great. So many people in general risk management focus on severity and probability. They forget detection. And so that's, you're singing my song. Well, so this has been great. It's a fantastic conversation. Heidi, I'm much prefer having you as a guest than being your client. But I wish you, your team, and your clients all the best. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Are you a leader looking to level up your skills? Discover the J. Flinch Learning Lab, your gateway to insightful video courses on culture change, management systems, problem solving, and much more. Immerse yourself into content created by me and transform your leadership approach. Ready to grow? Visit jflinch.com/learninglab and use code PODCAST for an exclusive 30% discount. Invest in your leadership journey today.